trickle in. Maybe you can ask the first question of everyone. We're going to do a little poll. What you think are the university's biggest sources of waste? And we have a few polls, so I'm very curious to see results. And it should create a word cloud. Here, I'll give an example. So my name's Angela Plant. I'm the recycling coordinator for the university. I work in facilities, and I'm basically today, I'm really happy you're here. I'm excited to share what we're doing and sort of what our goals are, which is to be a zero waste campus, and to talk together about what it would take to get there, especially including what it would take if we were to work together on that project. As you'll see, I think waste and recycling is a very local sort of project in sustainability, and we often have trouble keeping up with all of our bins on campus and we have so many different programs that it's really helpful to have feedback and support from people who are trying to make sure that the system is working where they're coming from. So in order to start talking about where we're at now, let's see what some of your responses are. What are the university's biggest sources of waste? I love that, coffee cups. Yeah, that's true, for sure. Shipments, the cafeteria, yep. We do create a lot of electronics. Okay, can close the poll and I will actually show you. All right. So here are our main waste streams. See if I can change slides. Voila. I apologize, there is some text in these slides. I hope it's not too distracting, but I wanted to be able to send out the slides to people who missed it. And so I just put some of the things I'm going to say. But if you look at this table, this is the university's sort of operational day-to-day waste, and it's broken up by year. So the light blue is the most recent year we've finished. Our reporting cycle's on the fiscal year, so we will have a new, I will have a new ream of data to work on for 2023-2024 in May. If you look at the light blue first, you can see that sort of the biggest sources, these are all of our wastes. Waste is still the biggest category, and that waste is coming from a lot of things that were said, like basically people just putting everything in the garbage and not recycling it, but also from lab waste, which tends to often not have a lot of recycling options. Or composting options, or bins for that matter. There's also just a lot of sort of leftover materials that get thrown out, furniture that's broken and mostly made of plastic, bulky items that don't make it to a construction and demolition bin, and I'll explain what the difference is there. Our goal is to actually reduce all of our waste streams. So this by 30% by 2030. And I think we have the most potential in this waste bar because a lot of that actually could be diverted into the other streams. For the reuse category, we have the free store. We also have a furniture reuse program. If you needed a piece of furniture, you can request it from our storage. And we run dump and run, which is when students move out of residences, and that's a whole lot of stuff that we collect and reuse. And this category also will soon include the friendlier takeout containers. Although their weight is not very substantial, we do have a reusable takeout container program on campus, and that does actually reduce a lot of the plastic that we're seeing going into the waste stream. Construction and demolition waste, this is heavy items. We have a lot of renovation projects, a lot of furniture that breaks or we can't find someone to donate it to in the community, which we do try, as well as all of our big metal pieces, and metal can be recycled really well. So whenever projects request a construction and demolition bin, a lot of that is recycled, and it's far superior than sending it to the landfill. Then if you look at the recycling and organics categories for 2023, which 2022, 2023, which is the light blue again, they're kind of on par, which I find exciting. We're increasing more and more organics, which I think is good, and I'm going to explain a bit more about that. And that organics is coming from, some people pointed out, the cafeteria. We collect a lot of organics from the cafeteria, the main dining hall, because most students, that's your only option. You just have an organics bin when you scrape off your plate. There's no other waste really, other than napkins, and that goes in the organics too. We collect a lot of back of house food scraps, a lot from the dining hall, and including some food waste. We collect oil that's recycled. We collect animal bedding at RGN, which is a lot of materials. We have a very large compactor container that we collect that, send it to organics. And then most of our bathrooms now collect all the paper towels. Where there are paper towels, we would prefer to have hand dryers, but where there are paper towels, most bathrooms now are collecting them and putting them in the compost, which is also a lot of waste. For the recycling programs, it's public recycling stations, and then a lot of smaller programs, such as a book recycling program, because you can't put books in the paper stream, you have to recycle it separately, as well as a glove recycling program. The Free Store has a shoe recycling program. So most of that is just your standard recycling streams from a recycling station: metal, plastic, glass, paper, cardboard. But also shredded paper gets recycled, so all those confidential bins. So that's a big category. And then finally, someone pointed out there's a lot of e-waste. It's true, like we do create a lot of electronic waste, and a lot of batteries are recycled on campus. The next slide, I put mostly for the sake of people who missed it. This sort of is just what I just said, the different categories. You can refer to it later if you wish. Okay, so how's the university doing? Generally, when we're talking about recycling, we use what's called a waste diversion figure, which means what percentage of the waste is diverted from being sent to the landfill. Our latest number was 61%. The highest we've had is 64%. And if you look, I put some sort of comparative data. To the right, the city of Ottawa is at 46%, and Canadian residential waste is around 52%. Our goal is to be 90% by 2050. Arguably, one thing that I find really shocking, we do a waste audit every year, or twice a year sometimes. And what I find most interesting is that for the day-to-day waste, actually like 80% of our waste is recyclable and compostable, sometimes even 90%. So it's not that this is actually impossible. We don't really need to wait till 2050 to get there. It's technically quite feasible. It's just that it requires different systems and probably a lot of education and a lot of redesign to kind of help people either make the right choice and put things in the right bin, or to redesign the waste, which is arguably much more effective, so that people don't have to make choices, like in the dining hall, where it is now all real plates, real cutlery. The only choice you have is to put your napkin and your food waste in the organics bin. And those are the most effective types of programs, where you design the waste out. All right. So I'm hoping that you have some questions for me of items that you find tricky to recycle. Recycling is complicated, and it's a very local project. If you live in Gatineau, your system is different than if you live in Ottawa. And if you live in a rural area, around either of those communities with a different municipality, your system may be different. That's because it's still garbage, so it's not very cost effective to send it very far distances. And so what can be recycled is really dependent on the facilities in your area and the type of equipment they have and how far the end market is. So if think of like paper is going to be collected and sort of baled and then sent to a paper facility that's going to turn it into new paper. And so recycling systems change even when you cross the border here in our region. So imagine we have students and staff from all over the world in different parts of Canada. And so it is complicated. Maybe I'll ask Holly to queue up our poll. Can you name an item that you think is confusing to recycle or compost properly? Yeah, plastic. Milk cartons, yes. Dirty things. Totally. For air fryer, is there a particular item or the air fryer itself? You can put it in the chat or unmute yourself. It's really up to you.
Over on the slide, there's a question in the chat that says, are all coffee cups compostable or only the ones marked as compostable?
Oh, such a good question. Yeah, cups and lids. Oh, that's a great question. I'm really appreciating that someone thought about that. Most people don't. Styrofoam. Hybrid plastic. I'm thinking maybe you mean like the new compostable plastics. Amazon packaging. Oh, such a great example because it all says it's recyclable. Black plastic. Yep, great question. Okay, this is great. Thank you. I'm hoping that I'm going to give you some resources in case I don't answer all of these questions today. But these are not surprising, and I think it's a good point of all of you who are here are interested. So if you have these questions about this many materials, it's fair to say that we really can't shame people for not properly recycling or taking the time. It is complicated. And we can only do our best to try and make it easier. So, and like I said, to redesign the waste out in the first place. So some of the resources here, I just want to point out our beautiful recycling stations because we have worked really closely with John at the Office of Campus Sustainability over the years to try and hone in on the most representative items. And we want this signage to be everywhere, you know, even stuck to your bins in your kitchen. It does give sort of the most common items that we would see. And often, you know, the compost section is the one sort of pointing that the arrow is pointing to. And that's the area where a lot of our waste should be going, is in the compost. And this picture, this recycling station, is sort of a model that we're moving to, where we have a collection point just for coffee cups, for whoever put coffee cups in those answers, and then a collection point for compost and paper. And that's because so much takeout packaging that's based in paper should be going in the compost, and that includes coffee cups, all coffee cups. Luckily, our composting facility, which is the same as the City of Ottawa's, currently, it accepts coffee cups, even though it doesn't say they're compostable. The ones that say compostable are probably better, but for right now, we're putting coffee cups in the compost. They're accepted, as well as any sort of takeout packaging that's made of paper. So a great example would be a pizza box or a Thai Express container. You just remove the metal handle. A Tim Hortons donut bag. But I'm going to get a bit more into that before I go into all of the things that should be properly composted. I just want to point out, I hope everyone sees, this is super important if you're half listening, that we have a UO Recyclopedia. There's a link to this page. Maybe I can ask Holly to share it in the chat. I search UO Recyclopedia, it comes up. And that does have a long list of different items and how to recycle them on campus. But it's not comprehensive. And so a great tool when in doubt is the City of Ottawa's Waste Explorer. And that's because the facilities we use are quite similar. For compost, it is the same facility. And so I would say it gives roughly accurate answers for the campus. And you can type in any item, and you can even, if it doesn't have an answer for that item, like gift wrap shredding, if it doesn't have that in the Waste Explorer, you can go to the bottom and click add to Waste Explorer and make a request that they add it in. The city of Gatineau also has this. I think it's called Detrius Navigateur des Déchets. And these are useful tools. They're not perhaps like, there might be some things that aren't correct. I think the City of Ottawa is a bit more closely aligned. So I would say look at the City of Ottawa one. But if you're looking for your home recycling, they are pretty cool tools, especially the fact that you can suggest new items. Okay. So I often get this question, especially from students, but I think people who are interested in sustainability generally, is recycling worth it? And I would argue that we don't have a lot of other options. Once the waste is already created, it's an urgent problem. We have a lot of it. And our alternatives are to put more land and energy into landfills, which are historically and continually placed on more marginalized people's lands, and now generally in rural areas. As well as incinerators. That's an option that the City of Ottawa is considering, and I would invite you to fill out the most recent survey, which is currently live for another few weeks. If you live in the City of Ottawa, please don't build an incinerator. I just personally don't think that that's the type of energy we should be devoting to dealing with waste, but ultimately, if we don't recycle and divert things to compost, we just need to find a place to put all of the garbage. And landfilling and incinerators are very expensive, heavily engineered projects that require a lot of energy and a lot of protection to the nearby environment. And they're generally not very popular in whoever's neighborhood is going to have to host them. So recycling. It's a temporary solution. It's something we have to have because we create all these materials. But it's true that the recycling system was proposed by the industry in the 80s, when there was sort of a general waste crisis and a lot of polluting, people just leaving garbage everywhere. And it made sense in some ways that recycling paper and cardboard, as well as metal, is fairly effective. It's not very costly. It's a good idea. There's less and less paper in the recycling stream, which is a good thing overall. There's less and less metal. There's more and more plastic, and plastic does not have a very good business case for recycling. And if you look at most recycling containers, they have a little recycling symbol with a number, and that reflects the type of plastic, the chemical composition. It's something decided by the industry. It does not necessarily mean that that material is recyclable, because again, that depends on what's existing in your nearby community. And so I put some examples of things that are typically very hard to recycle. The one that's most worrisome for us as a campus is the takeout plastics. And that includes, someone said black plastic. Black plastic is often number 5. Anything that's sort of heat resistant, I see, tends to be number 5 or 6, and they are harder to recycle, so more expensive. And although our recycling company assures us that certain of these items in the number 5 category are recyclable, I'm just going to say sometimes I have my doubts. And I have the same doubts about mixed materials. So the milk cartons, someone brought that up. Spot on. Milk cartons are paper mixed with plastic. If you want to recycle those two things, you have to separate them. And who's going to cut off the little the milk carton is something that's very hard to recycle, as well as I put an example here of like a styrofoam, or not a styrofoam, an aluminum food packaging that has, it's probably paper on one side and then like a metalish on the inside. Premier Moisson used to use these. Now they don't because we have friendlier, but they were arguably not recycled. Many municipalities won't actually promote that information. It's our little secret. And it's just because if we told people how complicated recycling was, they might recycle even less. So a lot of this stuff is put in the recycling and then sorted out at the recycling facility. And the final one is household items. We get a lot of stuff at the free store that people sort of optimistically hope we can reuse or I guess recycle, but hard plastics like a broken laundry hamper, get a lot of those because people buy the cheapest laundry hamper when they move into residence. Or the worst is the portable clothing racks that surely do not withstand even one move out of a building. Those big, heavy plastic materials, they can be recycled by someone, but not in our day-to-day recycling system. Our day-to-day recycling system is meant for packaging, thin plastics. Although not super thin plastics, because most facilities do not accept plastic bags or plastic wrap or Ziploc bags or chip bags. Anything very, very thin plastic also doesn't make the grade. It's too hard to recycle. I should have added that as an example. I'll do that for my presentation tomorrow in French. Textiles. Sorry, yes, Holly?
Quick question for you. There are some
Yeah.
questions in the chat about other materials. Do you want to talk about them here or do you want to wait till the end?
Yeah, I think we have time. Let's talk about them.
Okay, so there's a question. So for the air fryer, as in the whole
Yes.
item, there are metal inserts, an element, plastic outside. Is it e-waste? What consists of e-waste? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would put it in e-waste because e-waste facilities have set up some sort of recycling of sort of that kind of plastic because most electronics now are a lot of plastic. So that's sort of your best bet for recycling it, and anything that you can plug in can go in e-waste, although they're generally hoping most of the e-waste that we give them is computers and things with, heavy metals in them that can be extracted and recycled.
Next question. What about hybrid items? I think that's similar to what you were just talking about with paper and with metal or with paper and plastic. So if something's lined, can you still recycle it? Does it go in the garbage? Like this example of this mixed material container you have there.
Yeah, it's a great question. And maybe the best bet is to use the Waste Explorer to sort of look for the item and see whether they recommend recycling it or throwing it out. We accept milk cartons in the metal, plastic, glass, but every time we change contracts, that's the item that seems to move between metal, plastic, glass, and paper, which I think to me demonstrates that we create a lot of that kind of waste. But it has to be separated. It's sort of its own category, the Tetra Pak or the milk carton.
And then there's a question about the old school styrofoam coffee cups. I had said that those should go in the garbage. Those are kind of the exception to the coffee cup rule, though I don't think that they're as common anymore than you find them that often.
Thank goodness. Yeah, all styrofoam is number 6 plastic, and it is not really recyclable. So it goes in the garbage. We do luckily have a lab recycling program where we collect big pieces of recycling from shipping, and we work with local styrofoam companies that I think just chip it up and reuse it and resell it for shipping peanuts. But it's not cheap. Yeah.
And then there was a question about glass. I had said that glass is also very recyclable. It's similar to metal. I don't think it's quite as good because I think the melting down process is a bit more intensive, right? But it's
Yeah.
still pretty
It,
highly
it is
recyclable.
very recyclable, yes. And it really isn't that different from metal in that they're both very recyclable, but they take a lot of energy to recycle, a lot of heat. And so from a climate change perspective, it's a part of recycling that at some point won't be a very good solution. And glass is so much better for reuse programs. So I sort of feel like it's an inferior product when it's recycled because it works so well for reuse, like the program we have through the beer store.
Thus far, those are all the questions about specific items. So, sure.
Okay, feel free to keep adding them in. All right. Next, let's talk about composting. I hope that you all received, you're probably here, so you got this email. We're really focusing this year on compost expansion. And so if there's any way you can think of spreading that message in your office or other ways, I'm really happy to have ideas. Why is this? Well, as I said, so much takeout packaging is compostable, and that's a lot of the day-to-day garbage that we create is food packaging. And anything that's organic, that has touched food, it's better to go in the compost because the paper stream we actually want to keep quite clean and dry in order to make it easier to recycle. That also applies to paper products that have already been recycled. So when you think of toilet paper and paper towel, those products are probably already recycled leftover paper products. And so they can't be recycled again. Plastic is similar in that you can only kind of recycle these items for so long. They degrade in value over time. Whereas aluminum cans, you can melt sort of, not infinitely, but I think like hundreds of times you can keep remelting and remaking an aluminum can. So paper towel, napkins, those all go in the compost. Our last audit in Lamoureux, we did with the Faculty of Education Eco Club, and we found that 60% of the waste in that building is compostable. So when we're talking about, what kind of bins should you have in an event or in your office, often we see a garbage can that's like up to your waist, and then we see like this teeny little kitchen countertop for compost and a bin for metal, plastic, glass. And I think there's something to be said of if we were to switch the proportions and size of everything, it would signal more to people, oh, like the biggest can should be the compost. Also, why do I think compost is so important? Why are we putting so much emphasis on it from the Office of Campus Sustainability? It's because organics in the landfill is a climate change problem. When there's no oxygen and organics are compressed, they release methane gas. And methane gas is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So about 20% of Canada's methane emissions come from landfills and about 7% of our total greenhouse gas emissions. So organics should be removed from the landfill. It's a priority. It is also a priority of all governments from different political spectrums because composting is just really efficient and creates useful products. Nature has already figured this whole garbage thing out. And so organic things break down and become useful things such as soil or fertilizers. And so it's just a very efficient way to get rid of waste. And that's why you'll see that, like I said, all of the governments are trying to encourage people to participate more in composting programs. Are there any questions on what's compostable now? Because I know sometimes people are thrown off by all of the takeout packaging.
So there's a question that says, are wooden utensils compostable?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where Chartwells is moving to, or has moved to, bamboo cutlery, or wooden-based compostable cutlery. They're moving towards that. That's why there's also now a fee that's started, a 25-cent fee for cutlery. It's more expensive. And because we can't keep taking for granted that we can just keep using cutlery. Plastic cutlery is on the federal government's list of banned items because small plastic items are very hard to recycle as well and often don't get recycled. So someone brought up coffee cup lids. And for example, coffee cup lids should go in the landfill because generally anything the size of a credit card is not going to be recycled. That includes a piece of paper or a coffee cup lid, just because so much of our recycling is done in such a big scale by hand and with air machines and things. And so small items don't get recycled. Yeah.
There's another question about parchment paper. So they said, right now it seems to be in the green bin. A few years ago, it was in the garbage. The time before that, it was in the green bin, I think. Is this normal that it would change? So maybe you could just chat a little bit about recycling as a business.
Yeah, exactly. It really depends on the facilities. So even the city has, I'm surprised it would have changed for the city of Ottawa because they've had the same contract with Orca World for, I'm gonna say 15 years, 10, I'm forgetting now, but it's been a while. But facilities often change. So the university's contract for recycling and compost changes every 3 to 5 years. And it has to go through a public tender process because it's about like the recycling contract is maybe a $600,000 contract. And so depending on the company that wins, they will accept things in different places. That's what I meant when I said the milk carton seems to switch every time we switch contracts. It goes from the blue bin to the black bin, back to the blue bin. Parchment paper, yes, you can put it in the compost. I'm not sure it's adding anything to the compost. That's sort of my caveat of more and more stuff going in the compost. Ultimately, it sort of makes it less efficient. Paper is helpful for composting, but at a certain point, we can't just keep creating more waste that's compostable. At some point, facilities are going to say, no, like this isn't actually creating a good product. So reducing the waste would be a superior option.
Next question, where do chip bags go?
Chip bags, like Doritos?
Yeah. Maybe we could do both, like Doritos or like paper-based, but examples.
Yeah, so Dorito, anything that's like crinkly and plasticky is garbage. It's called film plastic, and it's just the plastic is too thin. It's already, it's too thin to be collected. There are collection programs through grocery store chains, like Metro has a box for plastic bags. And I don't really know what they do with that. But I've heard of some applications in like concrete, but otherwise, yeah, any sort of candy bar wrapper or granola bar wrapper, chip bag, it's generally garbage unless it's made of paper. Anything paper-based is compost because it's organic.
Next question. Are cereal boxes compostable even with the ink?
Yeah.
As long as
Even
the
with
plastic insert, like with the ink and stuff that's printed on the paper.
Oh yeah, generally we don't worry too much about ink, but if it has a plastic insert, yeah, it's compostable. If it's clean, I would maybe put it in the recycling. That's another annoying mixed material when they put like a plastic window so you can see your pasta inside the cardboard. It just makes it less recyclable, and really there's no accountability for that company that does that, unfortunately, in our current system. But it will get sent to hopefully the proper facility if you put it in.
A couple other questions that they're not specifically related to compost, they're more related to recycling. Do you want to go through them now?
Let's go through the rest and then we'll see if we have time at the end.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you guys so much for your questions. I just want to go briefly over a few programs that I think are particularly relevant to staff.
Do you want to do the pool of compost collection and staff kitchens first?
Oh, yes, yes. Sorry, I do want to ask this question because it's an area we're trying to focus on. Do you have a compost collection in your staff kitchen area? I guess my second question is it labeled? But a compost collection could be a little kitchen catcher bin, or it could just be a garbage bin that has a green bag in it. Green bags are the signal to cleaning staff that that is going in the compost. That's what you should see in the washroom under the paper towels. Okay, let's see. Oh, 50-50. Oh, a little more yeses. Okay, great. I think, yeah, we will talk about what we can do to change this. If you're in the no camp, I would love your help to change that. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so yeah, I just have a few more slides to talk about some of the programs here. Electronic waste. If you have a big quantity of electronic waste, you can just make a request to to 2222, and they will transport it to our electronic waste storage facility. But you can also leave small items on top of a recycling center. I won't say that we've made this perfect, but we do have loading docks in a lot of the buildings where cleaning staff will then take that item and put it in a sort of e-waste area. You can also just bring it to the free store. Just please label whether it's waste. That really helps everyone involved. Otherwise, it can be confusing. Is it broken? Does it work? Is it something lost, or is it just something someone didn't want? We also have battery boxes in the lobbies of, I think, every building, but if you know of a building that's not the case, let me know. And that's for any type of battery, including like an old cell phone battery. But you're supposed to always wrap rechargeable batteries in plastic, like a Ziploc bag, or often you can see in this photo, they'll have there's a little bag supposed to be on the box itself. And that's because there is a very minor risk that of rechargeable batteries rubbing together and causing heat. Very, very minor risk. And that's why we have these special boxes that have a liner on them, as opposed to we used to have little collection boxes on every recycling station. And we did collect way more batteries and we had someone hand sort them, but that is no more. And now we just have the boxes, but they are at least a bit safer for transportation. Also, books and course packs. This is one we create a lot of, obviously, and people tend to put these items in the paper recycling, which is not where they go at the university or the city of Ottawa because of their binding. The facility doesn't accept them, and so we have a special program to make sure they get recycled. We also, any sort of books can be brought to the free store, really anything. And then we have textbooks for change boxes on campus in 4 buildings where you can donate textbooks that are less than 15 years old. So those are options for recycling books and course packs. Okay, great. Before I jump into that, I'm going to go back a slide to see what are the other questions.
So
Okay,
is
sorry.
it best to throw out soiled tinfoil or put it in the recycling?
Sorry, I don't know why my screen is flashing. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
I don't know why.
Okay, well, maybe we won't go back to the recycling slide.
All right, here, I'll just stop sharing for a minute. Okay. And can you say the question again?
Is it best to throw out soiled tinfoil or put it in the recycling bin?
Oh, such a good question. I actually recently, a student told me that the city of Ottawa says to throw it out if it's dirty. And I think on the Quebec side, it's the opposite. So what is it at the University of Ottawa? Great question. I would I would say, yeah, to be determined, actually. I don't know the answer to that. What would happen at our particular facility with aluminum foil?
Another question, can you recycle receipts in paper recycling?
Receipts are also garbage because they are like a heat-treated paper. So I think that's something the library is actually working on because they give those receipts when you get your books. Yeah, receipts. Yeah, we should have gotten rid of receipts so long ago, but I also hear apparently like there's some health concerns about touching receipts. So yeah, but they're not recyclable. At least
Another
not here.
question. Do you need to wash a can and remove the paper in order to be able to recycle it?
A can?
Mhm.
What would be an example of a can with paper?
Well, like a can of beans or something like that that has a label on it, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah, great question. No, no, you don't. I'm sure it helps if you do. But our recycling facility has not required that responsibility of people, because it's probably a bit too much to ask at this point.
So is that the same for all kinds of plastic then? That like if you're able to rinse it out, that's wonderful, or glass or metal? But you can't
It
put
should
it
always
in-
be rinsed. Sorry, removing the label is one thing that I haven't seen anyone promote. Rinsing it in the city of Ottawa is heavily promoted. Rinsing it in the city of Gatineau, less heavily promoted. I think rinsing it is important. But yeah, I think what we can all sort of take from this is that recycling well requires a lot of personal responsibility for how you can consume. And so that's why I would say designing the waste out in the first place is a much smarter and effective approach, because we've had a recycling system in Ontario since 1994, so that's a while ago, and people are still not participating in it in a very fulsome manner. So yeah, it really would require a shift in how people think. It's not just about education. Like I really do think we have great signs that target most of the items. But the reality is that when we have volunteers like these amazing green reps here who help people just go to the garbage and put everything in the garbage. That's the most common thing, and there's not that sort of interest or responsibility in triaging or sorting your materials. And I don't think that is going to change just by having better signage or more education. I think we have to think more of how to eliminate the waste, as well.
Those are all of the questions that I skipped over from before.
Okay, great. This is my last slide then. I just want to talk about what we can, oh, not again, what we can do together. So I just have a few things, and I'm gonna pull this back up again. I hope that you won't mind. I would really like to follow up in April to see if any of you were able to do these things. So, oh man, every time I try to change slides, it just flops around like this. So the first thing that you already would have seen in the email is that we want to make sure there's compost in every kitchen. And so if you don't have compost yet, or if you find that your bin setup, like you don't think it's ideal or there's no signage, please send me a photo. Here is the best email address to use is prs-recycle, RECY, at uottawa.ca. If you can also use my personal email. I can't guarantee that I'll get to this in like the next week or two if everyone sends me the request, but I will slowly work away at improving the bins. Every time someone moves in office, the bins change, people put random bins in, and if you don't think it's clear if people don't know what goes where, there's no signage, then cleaning staff don't find it clear either. So we need to sort of continuously fix the infrastructure in every single office and kitchen. And that's what I mean about recycling being quite a local project. And so we need your help. The same thing with adding compost. That's more as we expand compost collection. It's very easy for us to just add a bin and put compost. Or if you have a paper collection in your kitchen, we should get rid of it because all the paper that's in there should be going in the compost. It's dirty or wet or has food on it. And so all we have to do is switch a bag to green, and cleaning staff will put that in the compost. Also, I would really invite everyone to sort of use your reusable coffee mug or cutlery because it matters so much to see people doing that. And next week, we actually have a mugshot competition with the Alumni Association. If you post a photo, you can win some very nice coffee. And if you don't follow already our Instagram, the Sustainability Office Instagram, it's like the best on campus, in my opinion. Sorry if anyone else has a really good Instagram. It's a really good one. And Holly can share in the chat the handle. And then if you don't already get our Sustainability Office newsletter, it is a great way to stay on top of events. And we also have an eco network that meets monthly for employees. So there's links here. Holly is your contact if you're interested in joining the eco network. I will be following up in April just to see if you've been able to do any of these things, because we are trying to sort of see what kind of resources we can offer to staff to help improve the waste diversion on campus. And you know your kitchen and what's there. So I really appreciate if you want to add compost or share some photos of what's going on. I will be happy to receive it. And I think that is it for me. We are about at time. So please feel free to contact me on Teams right now. If I didn't get to your question, just contact me on Teams and I'm happy to answer it. Just shoot me a message. Thank you so much, Holly, for moderating. And thanks everyone for participating in our questions.
Thank you all. Take care.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.